soft, barely audible sounds of a distant clock ticking. A room half lit by the muted glow of late afternoon sunlight. You are alone, and yet acutely aware of the absence of someone who should have been there. You've felt it before, haven't you? That quiet hollow in your chest, the one that whispers, "I'm invisible. I'm not enough." It's subtle, almost imperceptible, but it has been your companion for as long as you can remember. The thing that protected you once, the silence, the vigilance, the careful way you moved through the world, is now quietly shaping the boundaries of your life. Sometimes it's even quietly destroying you. You learned early that your feelings, your needs, your very presence were negotiable. That the space you occupy in the world must be earned silently, quietly, with patience you never chose. There was no overt harm, no shouting, no visible cruelty. But still, the messages were there, woven into the small silences, the delayed responses, the absent empathy. You are not a priority. This is the paradox of silent neglect. The very mechanisms you developed to survive, the careful listening, the constant anticipation, the shrinking of your own desires, once kept you safe. And yet they became invisible chains. They whisper in your adult life, "Stay small, don't take up space, keep quiet." And still you obey them, because that is what kept you alive. And now, in the silence, you suffer. What you experienced in those early years has a name, a structure, a blueprint etched into your nervous system. Psychologists call this emotional neglect, a silent wound that leaves no visible scar, yet reshapes identity in profound ways. Unlike trauma that screams, emotional neglect whispers, and it teaches you to whisper too. Imagine a young sapling in a garden that never receives sunlight. It bends toward the faintest light it can find, curling around shadows, shrinking when the wind blows. That sapling is you, forming a survival strategy. Your nervous system finely tuned to anticipate absence, rejection, or indifference. 3 concepts help us understand the depth of this experience. Parentification, when a child becomes a caretaker for the emotional needs of their caregivers, often sacrificing their own authentic experience. You may have learned early to soothe others, suppress your pain, and anticipate moods, all while leaving your own emotional hunger unspoken. Your voice became a service, your needs invisible. Hypervigilance, the constant internal scanning for threat or disapproval. Even minor expressions, delayed responses, or fleeting glances were decoded as potential danger. Your nervous system adapted. It remembers patterns you might no longer consciously notice, always predicting absence, always calculating survival. Avoidant attachment, the adult echo of a childhood built on emotional scarcity. You learned to rely on yourself because others could not reliably provide comfort or validation. You carry within you a blueprint that distances love, creating a self-protective shell around the tender, neglected inner child. Each of these patterns shapes your identity and your relational blueprint. Your nervous system remembers the silences, the unspoken disappointments. Your emotional compass became calibrated not to joy or comfort, but to the subtle warning signs of neglect. Even your default mode, that quiet space where the mind wanders, is shadowed by a persistent internal question. Will anyone notice me if I speak? The cost of this silent adaptation is profound. You've paid it not with money, nor with visible wounds, but with your authentic self. Every smile that wasn't fully yours, every nod of agreement you offered to please, every moment of silence when your voice longed to be heard. These are the invisible deaths of neglected childhoods. Consider the words of Carl Jung. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. You, in your quiet suffering, have been avoiding that acceptance. Because to see yourself fully would mean confronting decades of survival mechanisms, coping strategies that have been your lifeline, and yet, simultaneously, your cage. Your fear is subtle but persistent. Fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of even being seen. It complicates simple daily moments. A compliment may feel like scrutiny. An offer of help may trigger hesitation. A shared laugh may carry the echo of suspicion. Why are they being kind to me? What do they want? And yet, there is an invisible grief here, a mourning that has no outlet. This grief is not for a lost toy or a missed birthday. It is for the emotional presence that should have been there. It is the sacrifice of your authenticity for survival, the quiet resignation that your inner life is secondary, a ghost echoing behind the curtains of your conscious experience. These childhood patterns do not vanish, they evolve. They take root in adult behaviors, often disguised as personality traits. You might notice them in yourself if you listen closely. Relationships. You might avoid intimacy or cling too tightly, constantly anticipating withdrawal. Love becomes a delicate negotiation, measured and cautious. Career. Perhaps you work tirelessly, yet never claim recognition, always shrinking to allow others' voices to dominate. Your success feels hollow, like a borrowed identity. Self-worth. You may measure yourself against others silently, never celebrating victories, as if your needs are always negotiable. Boundaries. Saying no may feel impossible, even when self-preservation demands it. Your body remembers to yield before danger even exists. Emotional regulation. Anxiety, self-doubt, and emotional withdrawal are your default. Your nervous system is trained to anticipate absence, even in presence. Internal identity. The voice in your head that once whispered, "I'm not enough," may now speak in subtler tones, echoing in professional critiques, social gatherings, and private reflections. These are not flaws. They are coping strategies, sophisticated survival mechanisms refined over years. Witnessing them with curiosity rather than self-gaslighting is the first act of reclaiming your internal territory. You begin to unlearn, slowly, methodically, the internalized rules of neglect. You observe the habits your childhood mind created, and in that observation, the seed of freedom is planted. Healing begins with presence, noticing the child within who waited and still waits to be seen. Techniques like inner child reparenting invite you to speak to that child, offering validation that was withheld. Shadow work allows you to embrace parts of yourself that were abandoned, feared, or suppressed. Nervous system regulation, grounding, breath work, gentle movement, retrains your body to know safety outside the echo chamber of absence. Choosing softness over survival mode is revolutionary. It means allowing your own needs to matter. It means pausing in conversation, feeling the discomfort of space, and saying, "I am enough," even when unobserved. As the philosopher Rainer Maria Rilke once wrote, "Perhaps all the dragons in our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us act, just once, with beauty and courage." Your neglected child, your silent self, is that princess. She is waiting for acknowledgement, for witness, for tenderness. The goal is not to be fixed, but to become whole, to inhabit your own life fully, to speak when you feel, to rest when you are tired, to feel deeply and without apology. You carry scars not as marks of shame, but as maps, guides to the terrain of survival, resilience, and, eventually, freedom. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who might see themselves in these words. Subscribe, not just for content, but to remind yourself that you are not alone in the silent struggle. That the dark truth of neglect can be illuminated, not by others, but by your own attentive, compassionate gaze. And so, step forward quietly, with courage, with attention, and with the knowledge that every silent child deserves to be seen. Every neglected heart deserves its own light.